Hello and welcome to The Film Angle. I'm Alex.
I'm Kris.
And today we're going to be talking about The Batman.
Whoa, take it easy, sweetheart.
That's right. The film that everybody's talking about right now, The Batman. Wham, 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 wham.
I've been trying so hard to get that tune out of my head for the last week, and you just reintroduced it. I hate you.
I can't stop listening to it. It's, do you know what? It's great. It's one very simple motif, but oh my god, it gets into your head, doesn't it?
Oh my god, man. Right, I think I can speak for us both, Alex, in saying that, we both pretty much fell head over heels for this movie, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I am happy we've had a few days to think about it though, because I think I came out of the cinema a lot more kind of like ecstatic about it. And I'm glad we didn't have like a discussion straight after, because I think that would have been dangerous.
Like top 5 movies of all time, sort of like conversation.
Best movie ever made. No, I don't think I would have said that, but no, I did come out loving it a lot. But after a few days of reflection, I recognise that it's not perfect. But there's a comic book geek in me that really loved what they did there. I think we should also quickly just say for the audience, I'm sure there'll be warnings in the description and all that kind of stuff, but we're just gonna go straight in and talk about the Batman, spoilers and all. We're just gonna have a discussion about everything. If you haven't seen it, I think we both recommend it. Spoilers, we both liked it.
Yeah, definitely.
But you should see it. And if you don't care about spoilers and just want to listen anyway, I hope you enjoy. But yeah, so there's your warning. We're going to talk about the Batman. Everything about the Batman.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Whoa, well, where did I start? I mean, so we've had a total of 13 feature films starring the Cape Crusader, and now
Is this including the animated ones as well, or is this just live action Batman?
I'm talking live action.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. There have been a lot.
Yeah. So we started off with Adam West back in the day, and now obviously up to Christian Bale, and now we've got Robert Pattinson, and now director Matt Reeves and studio Warner Brothers has delivered a new Batman, the Batman, I would say. But question is, Alex, did we need it, or is it a unique take on the superhero we've now come to know so well?
It's true. I mean, do we ever need any of these? I don't know. But that being said, it has been 10 years since the last solo Batman film.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've had a few team ups with Batman v Superman and Justice League in the last few years. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed going back to just seeing Batman doing his own thing. I like DC. I think their shared universe isn't as strong as Marvel's, just because of the kind of overpowered characters they have. That Batman always kind of struggles to fit in a bit, and the best Batman stories are the ones which are very much centered on him, and no other kind of exterior characters, your Supermans, your Wonder Womans coming in to help him, because
You get sidelined, yeah.
Yeah, you could wipe up Gotham's you could wipe up Gotham's crime in a day with Superman, couldn't you?
Well, I don't know about you, but like this version of Gotham that we got in this new movie is really a cesspool. I mean, it feels unrecoverable, unredeemable. You do feel that overbearing weight that Batman has on him, and I think even the Justice League would have struggled to clean up this city.
Oh man, it's like they never have a chance to clean it because it's constantly raining and it's always dark and it's always grimy. It's like the city that literally never sleeps. It's just constantly just dirty and grimy. But yeah, it was. I thought this was the best, most realized version of Gotham so far, and really kind of played on the fact that Gotham is a character in this story. Corrupt as ever. There's a realism to it. Like, it does feel like it could be a city in our world, but it's still like a little bit comic booky. I mean, maybe it doesn't help that the whole kind of system in Gotham is corrupt, which is not too dissimilar to our own to our own government and our own system. Maybe we're becoming more like Gotham than Gotham is becoming like the real world these days.
Yeah, it's amazing how it manages to conjure up that simultaneous hyper realized, hyper realistic environment and setting, also having this overly exaggerated cartooniness, and those both elements really work in tandem to create something I can't really remember seeing in a comic book movie or a version of Batman before. It's either gone for the hyper realism or gone for the camp, never both at once, and this movie really manages to achieve both of those at the same time.
Yeah, I was a
Um,
little bit worried when we first saw the trailer for it that potentially it was going to be, we'd got we'd got the hyperrealism, like you said, with the Christopher Nolan films, which I really enjoy, especially The Dark Knight, because it's a masterpiece of a film.
Yeah, I caught up with that recently. I caught up with Dark Knight recently, and it still works so well today. I mean, I know you were saying that the Bat movies that center on the Batman as a character are the highlights, but really, he's almost sidelined in that movie. It's the Joker's show watching
Yeah,
watching the Dark Knight, and yeah, that movie still works so well. It still managed to incorporate Batman as a character, but that's always going to be your benchmark, and
yeah,
and that's a high benchmark as well. So, do not envy Matt Reeves.
it works because it's not just a good comic book film; it's like a really really good film, in its own right. And I think that was the film that really pushed Nolan into this kind of stardom where, a lot of us, film fanboys really, really jumped onto his bandwagon after that. It's a brilliant film, but we've seen the real Batman, Batman in real life. And I was a little bit worried this film was going to go down a similar route. I kind of wanted a little bit more comic booky Batman to kind of see something replicate what we see on the pages. But I think Matt Reeves actually did a really good job, despite my worries of kind of making Batman feel real, but maybe his world not as real as Christopher Nolan. It almost feels like the Gotham that we see from the comic books feels real, and the Batman in it is maybe a slightly bit more comic booky. I don't think we're going to see characters like Clayface or Killer Croc pop up in this world, but I think he's created a really really unique kind of vision for the character that kind of probably goes closer towards the Arkham games
Yeah,
world. It feels very inspired by that, which is a kind of relatively, grimy, semi-realistic Batman take in video game form.
yeah, no, that definitely struck me when watching the movie as well. I mean, I we spoke afterwards, Alex, and yeah, as soon as I went home, I downloaded the Arkham trilogy again because it really evoked the spirit of those games I remember enjoying so much. But yeah, the character is of Batman seems to be really inverted in this version of the film, which is really brave move. It was clear that Reeves really wanted to depart from the traditional archetype of Bruce Wayne that we've known from the past, and it became a real light bulb moment for Reeves, I think, when he listened to Nirvana's song, Something in the Way, which is actually featured twice in the movie, ultimately appears twice. But
Very interesting choice that one. I thought I liked it,
yeah,
but I was like, oh, okay, this is different. Not seen something like this in a Batman film before.
well, when he was writing the film, he spoke that he listened to that song, and he really it was a real moment for him where he thought, right, yes, I want this character to really invoke that Kurt Cobain sensibility, that introverted, disillusioned sort of guy that maybe isn't exactly the playboy billionaire that we've seen in previous iterations. And it's a really interesting take on the character, which could have went either way. I mean, like fans could have ended up fucking hating this, but and also the goodwill that Pattinson's garnered over the last couple of years has really helped too. So yeah, it was the right time and the right sort of vision behind it. I think we're really lucky we could have got something a lot different.
Yeah, yeah. I think I knew I was in for a good ride with that opening. I kind of wish like it opens on the Riddler
Yeah,
committing a crime, which is fine, but I don't see that as the opening so much. I almost wish they didn't do that. The opening as soon as we get narration from Robert Pattinson's Batman, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. First of all, that's very comic booky, and second of all, that's very noiry.
yeah,
Like it like and he is a detective, and they emphasize that in this film a lot. But you got pure noir vibes, the rain, the kind of neon lights in this dark city. It's kind of Blade Runner in a way, and I really wish they kept to the narration. I might be in a small group of people that think that, but I really wish they kept the narration throughout the whole film. It only pops up a couple of times, but then you get this spiel about the bat signal and how it creates fear into people, and you get this segment of film where you see the like people who have just stolen stuff from a store, and all these different kind of criminals going around Gotham being absolutely petrified as soon as they see
Yeah.
that bat signal, and they think Batman's in the shadows, and it's only for one particular group of criminals that he is, but all the others are like, you know, crapping themselves that he might be there. And it really set up the mood of the film and the type of Batman we were going to see. Then you see the boots kind of stomping away as he comes through to like just beat up a gang of criminals. And yeah, I had absolute chills during that sequence. Yeah, it really set up the tone and the vibe of the film. Batman. We're not going back into his origin, or they meddle a little bit in terms of details around it, but they're not
Yeah.
showing you the pearls. We're not having him walk out the cinema with his parents and being shot. Um, you know what's
No
going on.
flashbacks. I'm so grateful there was no flashbacks in this
Yeah,
movie. It would have been
yeah,
right to the movie's detriment.
100%, 100%. It's just like, here's a Batman, here's a story, and it is a kind of origin in terms of, we've got a very early on Batman here, and he's kind of grows into become he goes from becoming the vengeance in the shadows to becoming the hero of hope at the end in his own kind of twisted way, and his realization
Mm.
of that. So it does delve into some form of character arc for Batman. But it's also probably worth saying as well, this is the most Batman film. Like it's very much his film, and it's very much a character study on him, kind of coming to terms with what he's doing and figuring it out. Like there's no Playboy Bruce Wayne in this. This is a Batman who doesn't want to be Bruce Wayne and is only now figuring out that he is Batman. And Bruce Wayne's just a gadget that he can use to get into places that Batman can't. And I love that. I really love that.
Yeah, I think the anger that comes through from Pattinson's portrayal is really palpable, and even find some of his frustrations some so involving that they sort of transferred me over to me when watching the movie. Like I felt the overwhelming sense of responsibility watching the film, and it takes quite a bit of beating on him. In no way is he like an overpowered character. He gets it as good as he gives, but as he describes himself as being the shadow of the city, as we hear at the start of the movie, the film definitely hones in on that as him being this unstoppable, unrelenting force that is driven all by this rage and emotion built inside of him. And even though we get that vulnerability from him, I feel like there's nothing stopping. Like he will, until the moment he dies or falls down dead, he will go for it, and he will pursue whatever he is pursuing. He is an immovable object.
But I think also by the end of the film, he comes to the terms with the fact that maybe his mindset isn't the way to do it. He comes across as like this all powerful. I don't care if I'm going to die. I have no fear. I'm really smart. I can play the games, kind of guy. But actually, by the end of the film, like you kind of realize, yeah, he solved a few riddles, but his detective skills aren't up to scratch just yet.
Yeah, I think a couple of rewatches might convince me that it could at least contend to be the best Batman movie, just purely on. I am a sucker. Call me basic, but the aesthetic is just so well realized, isn't it? I mean, the cinematography, obviously directed by Greg Fraser, who of course shot the beautiful and amazing Dune last year.
Mm.
But yeah, but it's a sight and sound experience, isn't it? And they are things that I think that stay with you long after the credits roll. The way the camera obscures in certain moments of action in the movie to really create a surreal sense of space and as well disorientate the person watching the film. Like the shades of blood oranges, the reds, neon lights, the shadows, they're all really integral in creating this hyper realized version of Gotham where crime and anarchy really loom around every corner, right?
Yeah,
And
I
that's what
think
stays with you.
that's what I love most about the film as well. Just the whole atmosphere, the way they've created it. I bet it was a nightmare to try and capture that on film. I mean, they film a whole car chase sequence in the rain. You just think
Where
like
you've no
you could,
sense of geography of anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
no geography, and you could barely keep up with what's going on. Batman can barely drive the Batmobile at that point. He stalls it to begin with,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
love. Like you could feel the power in that car. And you can see him really struggling to drive it as he's chasing the penguin. Um, and yeah, a lot of destruction. But yeah, you just barely know what's going on. It just made me think like next time I'm driving in the rain at night on the motorway, I'm putting the Batman song on, man. I'm putting that theme music because I think it'll make me feel like
Make you feel like the Penguin or Batman.
Batman. Probably, I'm gonna pretend I'm Batman in this situation.
Well, watch out for Alex on the road, guys. I think
Yeah, if it's raining and it's nighttime, just yeah, beware. It's like
yeah, just everybody avoid the Bristol area over the next coming months.
gripping onto my steering wheel.
Should we talk about some of maybe the memorable additions to the cast as well as Batman? I mean,
Oh yeah, there are others, and they are
oh
also, I
yeah,
would say, the definitive versions of these characters. Everybody here is well cast, but please tell me your favorites.
mm, definitely Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman for me. I mean, the scenes between her and Pattinson are some of my favorites in the movie, and there's this like gothic emo eroticism between them in their
Yes.
scenes. Yeah, like two tortured and scarred orphans that were like are totally into each other.
Yeah,
Um,
they're very sensual, and the way she moves very much like the Catwoman you
yeah,
would find in like the animated series and stuff like that. Like everything she does and the tension between her and Batman. Yeah, like you said, there's a weird gothic eroticism to it that this is yeah, it really captures those two. It really captures their relationship really well.
yeah, it's got that Nirvana grungy sort of feel to it that I totally digged. And married with the cinematography, I mean, that's an aesthetic that really stayed with me at the end of the film. I think there are scenes, the score, the music, and the characterization. That's the stuff that stays with you. But well, we got to talk about the Riddler too, right? I mean, he's the main antagonist of the movie, played by one of our favorite actors, Paul Dano. We
Yeah.
you and I are big fans of him ever since There Will Be Blood. He's always been somebody I get really excited about when he shows up in the movie, and I had no doubt he'd nail this assignment, and he did.
Yeah, yeah. He understood the assignment of what it means to be a Batman villain. And yes, we're in a slightly more realistic world here, but he really goes for it with his performance.
Yeah, no spandex or Jim Carrey eccentric performances here.
It is. It's kind of like he goes for it, and it's a little bit wild, and it's a little bit wilder than most performances in the film. But I think to me, it felt like a Batman villain. It felt like how a Batman villain should, and I think he needed that to almost because by the end of the film, you realize he's gathered a following.
Mhm.
A relatively small following of 500 followers.
Yeah,
But he's gathered that, and you don't get that without some kind of charisma, something to you. I think if we went down the hyper realism route, because obviously this is a guy who is mentally ill, I think you could walk into some pretty dangerous stereotypes if you went down like a hyper real route. So I like the fact that he camped it up. Very
knew
Batman.
when too, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, he just felt like a Batman villain. That's how Batman villains should be to me.
Mm.
I loved his performance in the film. I didn't love like where the story went to with him a bit, like his arrest and his uncovering his plan. Um, I didn't really always feel the motivation. Like I wanted to know more about him. I thought for a minute they were going to go down a route of he was like Thomas Wayne's, you know,
Mm.
like son from a different affair or something like that. Which then I realized they kind of did that in the Joker film, or alluded to that. Um, but but it kind of felt like maybe that's where they were going here, like the parallels between him and Bruce Wayne. But yeah, I wanted to know like how he found out the information and all this kind of stuff. I just felt there was some story threads with his character. He was more of just a like a he was just like a mastermind of this thing. It doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter too much why, but he's uncovered something for the Batman to really think about, and it kind of more informs Batman's character than it does the Riddler. I don't know if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, to a degree, he is a mastermind, and he certainly is clever at constructing these Zodiac, David Fincher-esque sort of puzzles for Batman. But he is somebody who is just at his core mentally broken, and we see that from the final scenes where he literally can't even keep his mind together anymore. He is literally just like a babbling wreck. He's
Yeah.
moaning and wheeling,
In that
and
scene where he thinks like him and Batman are basically one and the same, like they're both vigilantes in the
mm,
city. Batman obviously is just like absolutely not, like you and me are not the same. And he kind of is screaming and throwing a tantrum like a child.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I thought that was brilliant. I loved his wild choices. I would love to have just been there on set watching him just absolutely go for it. It was interesting.
yeah. It's a very There Will Be Blood performance where he understands how to tap in vocally into the nuances of what makes something really like unsettle you. It's like listening to there's hyper realism, and I do really mean that about the way he acts and the voices that he chooses to use. It's like he's spent a lot of time researching, you know, serial killers or the mentally ill. It's just the way he manifests that is almost chilling to the bone because we recognize that in a real scenario, in a real point of view.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love the scene in particular between him and Batman in the kind of prison interrogation kind of scene, and for a minute you think that he's guessed that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he's just there going Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne, Bruce Wayne, and you see the fear in
Yeah,
Batman's eyes as he's trying to keep his cool because he's checking the cameras, he's going shit like this might be it, somebody might have figured it out, and the whole scene kind of gets twisted on his head as he's like, we didn't get him. He was the one guy we didn't get. I thought it was really interesting. But I kind of also liked the fact that he couldn't even. He was so close to figuring out that Bruce Wayne was Batman, but like it, I don't think the thought crossed his mind. And I think there's a theme throughout the film of kind of this privilege that Bruce Wayne doesn't really understand that he has, and the way he looks at things, the way he sees crime and corruption in Gotham. Like he doesn't care if the mayor's got killed. He doesn't care about these people until it becomes about his dad. And Catwoman mentions something about like, oh, you must be rich under there if you think that I had a choice to become this way. And I think it's really him kind of like coming to terms with the fact that his privilege is informing his decisions throughout the film, and obviously his privilege has informed the reason why he is the way he is, and the Riddler is the way he is, despite having very similar kind of scenarios. I just thought that was really interesting point because I think a lot of people have said like, oh, if Bruce Wayne just like gave his billions to help the city, like there would be no need for Batman. Like this guy just dresses up as a bat. It's more like self satisfaction as much as it is like a revenge or a vengeance or a trying to do good. I love the way they really dived into that kind of thought in this film.
Yeah, because like in past previous films, and even in the Christopher Nolan movies, where it's hyper, where it's we get the realism, we still we don't get the ridicule that the Batman gets in this movie, where everybody is like, even the cops don't have his trust. They call him a freak. It's a guy in a costume. I mean, like, how would you react in a real life scenario if a guy like that came dressed into a police department?
Yeah, it feels weird in this film,
It
doesn't
feels
it?
weird when he's
Like
walking
when
that first scene where he turns up to the mayor's scene of the crime, and he's walking down the corridor, and everybody's just staring at this guy walking stoically through a corridor, and he just gets hurled insults, and he's like, yeah, I kind of get it. It's sort of
yeah.
ridiculous.
I think the
Um,
scene I really felt it was when he first goes to the Iceberg Lounge and he knocks on the door dressed in his Batman
yeah,
costume. And they just open up the door and he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And they're like, "I think we could probably figure out who you are, man dressed as Bat." I
yeah,
just,
and it's mirrored by the scene later on where he comes back to the Iceberg Lounge dressed as Bruce Wayne, and
yeah,
like it gets a better reception than the first visit.
yeah, and but that for me was, I think that inform that realization. I think we'll see more Bruce Wayne going forward, that there are places where Bruce Wayne can go because of his privilege,
Yeah,
because of his money and his reputation within
that
Gotham,
goes only
that
so
Batman
far.
could not get. Batman, I don't think, could walk into a room with Carmine Falcone and just have a discussion. Obviously, there are certain questions that Bruce Wayne could only ask as Bruce
Yeah.
Wayne in that situation, but I don't think he would have even got close to having a one-on-one meeting with him. And I love that, like, that Bruce Wayne's just a gadget.
But I think that that goodwill that Bruce Wayne has is strained because he spends 90% of his time as the Batman. So as everybody says in the film, like we never see Bruce Wayne, he's a recluse. He never comes out. You know, he's the Prince of Gotham, but he holds very little power due to how little involvement he has, like his parents did. And I think that only goes so far, and I think that's strained. And if we get more Batman and less Bruce Wayne in the future, then he's more a token than an actual political figure or that people actually
Yeah,
respect, and that is strained in this movie. And people ridicule him behind his back too.
yeah.
So he's powerful because of his name. Would that last forever in future films? That's interesting.
Yeah, I almost wish that they had gone down some of the routes which they set up. So at one point in the film, Alfred gets a package that was intended for Bruce Wayne
Yeah,
that blows up. And for a minute you think, oh, they've killed Alfred. That's a pretty bold choice. Like, this is a different Batman, and they
yeah,
don't. And then later on in the film, they reveal some Thomas Wayne might not have been this shining knight of Gotham as you once thought. But it's kind of downplayed a little bit again later in the film. It's like, no, Carmine Falcone used him. Like, it wasn't really,
oh
it
yeah,
was never really a bad guy. And I really wanted them to, it felt like they were a little bit scared of going down that route of,
because it mirrors our time so well. Yeah,
yeah, like, do you know what? We've seen Alfred in every single version of these now. Uh, just do you know what? If you'd killed him, I think I would have had a much bigger emotional response.
yeah,
And same with, I think, because they brought up the themes of privilege and stuff like that, for Bruce Wayne doing what he's doing in the name of his parents, to then realize that they weren't, or at least his dad wasn't, this kind of like, you know gods among men kind of guy. He was so good.
yeah.
I think that would have been like a really interesting kind of thing for him to come to grips with, and kind of say, all right, maybe I can do better. And but my better is obviously now dressed as a bat. I really wish they had stuck to their guns with those story segments.
Yeah, we don't get much of Alfred in this movie, admittedly. And I think I don't know, I think if we lost him pretty early on in the movie, I think it would have not really worked. I don't know if it had the emotional punch it would have intended. I think we still need to get a little bit more time to get to know Alfred and how he protects Bruce Wayne and, and his loyalty to the house. Yeah,
I think the audience, the same way in the way that they got rid of the origin story, I think the audience knows enough about Alfred that whoever's playing him, it would evoke an emotional response to see him die in this film. I don't know. I disagree with that. I think the fact that we saw Batman be mean to him, that would have been the last thing he said. You like our own knowledge of the lore of Batman, and this
hmm
goes for general audiences as well. Like you said, there's been 13 Batman films. um, I think it would have been fine if they killed Alfred, and I think it would have really, hit home a pretty emotional point for Bruce Wayne.
maybe that's more on the casting of Andy Serkis for me. Um, I think we all still probably idolize Michael Caine's performance as Alfred in our heads, and that kindly, um, you know, mm, quick quipping sort of attitude that he brings to it is sort of contrasted by Circus's sort of serious tone in this movie. And yeah, I would have welcomed a little, but I guess it fits the movie though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
you couldn't
you
have
can
you
tell
couldn't,
he's not fully on board with the way the
yeah.
Batman project is going about. He's clearly helping, but he's clearly not keen on the route that Bruce Wayne is taking at that time. And obviously that is now going to change, and I'm sure he'll be more on board. And their relationship, they revealed some things. His almost death revealed to Bruce that he could be scared, and he still um, has relationships, because he says to Alfred at one point, "I don't care if I die," but he's not thinking
Yeah.
about anybody else in that moment. So it kind of does make sense that Alfred is alive. It makes sense to hit home those emotional points of like, you could lose people, stop being so reckless. Um,
Yeah, he's holding the reins of his emo teenage
yeah.
nephew sort of thing, isn't he?
Should we talk about some other characters? What about the Penguin, played by Colin Farrell?
Which I didn't know until after watching the trailer was Colin Farrell. I was so impressed by the prosthetics that were put on him in this movie. I mean, I think he went into Starbucks, didn't he? He did as a test run for his makeup. He walked into Starbucks to see if anybody recognized him. Nobody did, but he got a few stares, which I'm not surprised with the gashes on his face.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible
Hmm.
prosthetics, incredible makeup, and it's interesting because obviously we've seen another actor completely transformed in a fat suit with prosthetics earlier this year, which was Jared Leto in House of Gucci,
Oh
and it just
boy.
shows you how, when in the right hands, it can be done really well. Jared Leto obviously got a lot of stick for his kind of caricature of a in within this fat suit, within the prosthetics, whereas Colin Farrell obviously um
Unrecognizable. Yeah.
unrecognizable, completely believed him as that role. I think you spend the first maybe 30 seconds with him going, all right, I know it's Colin Farrell, I'm looking for seams, I'm
Yeah.
looking for something to tell me it's Colin Farrell,
And then you
and
can't see the seams,
you
and
can't
then
see
you settle
it.
in.
You settle in. You forget that you forget that it's Colin Farrell completely.
And
Like,
even vocally, the way he pulls up that that gangstery Bronx accent, you completely fall for it. It's a complete disappearance into a role. It's the probably the best achievement in makeup I've seen in years.
yeah, and he's again, he understood the assignment as a Batman villain. Like he gets that he's got to be a little bit larger than life, but it's never too much, and it really feels it feels part of this world. Yeah, no, I loved him. I thought it was brilliant. World's greatest detectives.
Oh boy, yeah, and then you have obviously who else is in this movie?
Commissioner Gordon, played by Jeffrey
Commissioner
Wright.
Gordon. He's so well, not yet Commissioner, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry, Officer Gordon.
Yeah, Jeffrey Wright is playing Gordon, Officer Gordon here, and king of the sexy voices, right? I mean, that guy's got a voice like treacle, and like this, what this movie really comes down to is him and the Batman sitting in dark rooms together, going over codes and talking in hushed, whispered voices, and and this is some of the great best moments in the movie, right?
They really kind of nailed like a more interesting take on this relationship between Batman and Gordon here. It
Yes,
feels like a buddy cop.
yeah,
Um,
they rely on each other completely.
yeah, like, oh, these kind of two, different characters coming together to solve crimes. Like, he feels almost like a sidekick to Batman at times. As
Oh
they
yeah,
go through the orphanage together, and I was thinking, like, he's essentially Robin here. Like, he's this is Batman and Robin. Obviously, a very it's not Robin, it's Gordon, but they're taking this together. They're partners
yeah,
in crime, not partners in crime. They're partners solving crimes.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought Jeffrey Wright was excellent, and he
Well,
gets some really funny lines as well to kind of point out the absurdity of Batman. He plays a really really interesting version, a really great take, I think, on this character.
yeah, well, Gordon has he has the connections, he has the level-headed morality, and that is sort of that marries well with Pattinson's hyper intelligence. He's obviously intellectually superior. He's always a step ahead, Gordon, in terms of the puzzle making, and obviously he's the brawn too. So they kind of they lend each other very well, and they need each other.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell that um, they're very similar in a lot of aspects. And I think there's a lot of admiration from Batman's side
Hmm.
for Gordon and vice versa. Um, yeah, they get some really interesting scenes together, and it's probably the most we've seen those two kind of do stuff together on film. Really, really good stuff. Chris, what did you think of the kind of third act of the film? It's a really long film, and I must admit I was kind of exhausted by the end. I loved it. Like I wanted to, like I could stay in that world forever, but there's no doubt I was exhausted, and maybe the third act didn't hit as strong as the rest of the film for me. Did you have a similar kind of experience with that?
Now, this is probably the first time we're probably going to have to lock heads in this discussion. I find the third act to be the strongest act of the movie for me in terms of pushing the narrative forward and really all the all the emotions in the film really come to a boiling point. Um, yeah, I think probably because 3 hour film doesn't really phase me. I've watched a lot of 3 hour films recently, and this one flew by. This one flew by, and the third act turned into like a disaster movie, which I wasn't really expecting. That kind of came left field.
I think that maybe that's what kind of like took me back a bit was I also wasn't expecting a disaster movie, and I think it's very well understood that this isn't the end of Riddler's plans when he gets caught. But I still kind of was wondering what his what the like what the end goal was for him. Was it just to destroy? I mean, the water obviously is like a cleansing Gotham
Yes,
of its
it's a
corruption, but
metaphor.
essentially, but having gunmen in a stadium and just shooting, uh, civilians, and obviously he was going for the newly elected mayor as well. I just didn't understand what the kind of like the end goal was here. Was it just to kill everyone? What was the idea? It felt very much like, oh, this isn't the flashiest Batman film. Maybe we should put some flashier, more spectacle stuff in here at the end.
Well, I would argue that the Riddler felt that everybody who was not necessarily just political figures, but everybody that wasn't following him were conforming to the way that Gotham was being elected and being run. So everybody who was a spectator of that, or everybody who was at the mayoral candidates inauguration, were just as guilty. So he kind of tarnished everybody with the same brush. But yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It does kind of is sensory overload and information overload at the end with the Riddler. But I bought into it just purely on a emotive level and the way that I got more in tune with what Batman's character was coming to towards the end of the film, and the real carrying on that unrelenting force of him being an unstoppable force in nature, but the fragility really came to a boiling point. You know, he was really outmatched on this third act, and it was great having the side characters there to kind of support him for once.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
where before he was sort of leading the whole thing, he needed a bit of lifting. We get that from Catwoman and from Gordon.
Yeah, everybody has a role to play there at the end.
Mhm.
His kind of the people who he trusts. But yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I was tired. I think this film definitely demands multiple viewings, despite
100%.
how long it is. Like, I want to go back to that world now. I'd happily go back to that world now if I didn't have work tomorrow. I'd sit down and watch a 3 hour film right now.
I was lucky enough to see it in IMAX, and you know it was a really great experience. It really did like envelop me watching it in, and I was soaked in. And it didn't feel like a 3 hour movie to me. I'd happily go back. I'm almost tempted to go back and see it IMAX a second time just so I can see it in that format because it's such an experience. It's similar to watching a movie like Dune last year, where it's more you got to breathe it and smell it and everything else. You gotta take it all in, as opposed to watching it at home. It's not. I don't know if it'll be the same.
Yeah, I think it draws a lot of parallels to Dune in the way that it's very much uh, an overwhelming cinematic experience in terms of the way it envelops you in that world.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think there is something to be said about the length. I think it is long, and I think you're tired by the end, and I think that made me difficult. I think that made it difficult for me to kind of run with some of the story points or fully understand some of the kind of motivations behind what was going on. But maybe I'll change my tune on that later. But overall, I clearly I really liked the film. I think it's got flaws. Don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it's The Dark Knight. But it's still one of the best Batman films we've ever seen, and the probably the most kind of realized versions of these characters from comic book to screen for me. And it works. I can't wait to get back into this world. I know they're doing a TV show with the Penguin and maybe a couple of others. I don't want them to like oversaturate this world. Like,
Yeah,
let's
please.
like take it one step at a time. But I can't wait to see what Matt Reeves comes up with next. But I also don't. I wouldn't want to be him. I don't know you how you come back and do something as good or better. But then again, we probably said that of Nolan after Batman Begins, which is a very solid Batman film as well. Let's wrap up our Batman spoiler review there. Um, yeah, I enjoyed it, and you?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to return to it. It'll probably be a 4K Blu-ray buy for me. I'm gonna buy that. I'm gonna watch it at home a couple of times.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to be picking that one up on Blu-ray for sure.
For sure. Yeah, guys, me and Alex were talking talking last week, and I think Alex has already established his catchphrase.
Yes, yeah. When you come to the editing room, you just don't realize just how many times you say different things. But yeah, there you go. For sure, is something I say a lot that I wasn't aware of before doing this with you.
I like it. I think it's very cute.
Talking of doing this with you, Kris. Next week, I think we're gonna bring it back round to a discussion very similar to kind of our first episode. In between these films that we're just talking about in one particular episodes, or like last week we did a list and stuff like that. We're actually watching a lot of stuff, so I think maybe we should catch up and actually talk about some of the things we've been watching in between these episodes. That obviously we haven't put a spotlight onto the episode, so it'd just be good to catch up with you and see what you've been watching recently.
Yeah, I think we I don't know about you, but I have a watch list as long as my arm, and I got so much stuff to catch up with. Hopefully, some of our listeners will have seen a couple of these movies, or at least heard of them, and it's an opportunity for everybody listening to kind of chime in and relate a little bit better to what we're talking about.
Definitely, definitely. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you then, and just kind of chatting about a whole range of films with you. So yeah, that'll be good to talk to you then, Kris. So I think that's a wrap for this episode of The Film Angle. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Goodbye.